Hey everyone, Marsh from Consequence here. We're gonna do a tier list. It's fun and just why not? Just the note that this is kind of geared to the top 100, 200-ish level. Once you get past that, you can really take anything you want, as the player skill will out class anything else. But at the bottom here, we're gonna have Windwalker Monk. They need a massive buff. They're extremely behind. They don't do anything well. Um, I am not aware of any Windwalker monks in the top 100 who are going to see play as of right now, especially with the two other monk classes being fairly good, or specs being quite good. So Windwalker, it needs a lot of help. Going to the E tier, these are classes that like you could see play if your player is extremely good, or like the fight is like very designed for that class. So here we have Guardian Druid. It's just behind the other uh, tanks. I mean, it's really tanky, but it doesn't bring like much utility. It just kind of exists. And it also got like nerfed really hard and then buffed again. It just hasn't really caught up to where it was. And then also in E here, we're gonna have both Warlock specs that aren't demo, wherever F is. So again, like if the fight's specifically designed for these classes to shine, they will be fine. But you'll probably be playing the demo spec for most of the encounters, and these classes are behind um, the others or other classes. So going up to D here, I kind of view D column as like you can take these players if like they're some of your best players and there'll be absolutely no problems. But the classes themselves have some weaknesses. So the first thing I'm going to put here is, sorry, I'll keep looking over because I have notes, is the Prot Warrior. So if you need Battle Shout, you can bring it. Prot Warrior has some problems in terms of survivability, but like if the player is really, really good, then that won't be an issue. Um, Also, there's like been theories that the world first guilds might use a Prot Warrior because the DPS Warrior specs aren't as good, and they did. I think one of the guilds did that in Nathria. So but this is geared for a little past that. This video is. So next here we have Mark's Hunter. Um, Mark's does like lower damage, single target. It's okay in some other scenarios. Maybe you play it over the other hunter specs in certain situations, but it is a little behind right now. We don't have to go into depth. Frost Decay, this might be a little higher in practice, but it just it's falling off a little from where it is now, and it's just kind of mid, in my opinion. But again, if you have like a god tier DK player who can flex between the two specs, they'll be more than fine. Um, Next on my list, I have Serve. Serve is like kind of low key sick right now. It does a lot of damage. Its tier is cool. It kind of has like sleeper OP like association to it, but it is in a raid setting. It is melee, and there's only very limited melee spots, especially where certain melee are just so much better than the others. Next, I have Feral. You can kind of like mix match any of these in this category and it'll be fine. The ordering doesn't really matter too much here. But Feral, again, it does like a lot of damage. And I'm assuming that this also kind of has like sleeper good like tendencies. I'm not saying go in gear Feral Druid, but if your balanced Druid knows Feral, it might be worth having them like play it for some fights. But yeah, don't go out of your way to put one in. Next I got Arms Warrior. Um, it's going to be a lower DPS than I think most of these classes, but it brings Rally. It's it's got its execute. Warrior always has a place in a raid, so that's why it kind of moved above here. Next, where is it? It's a Shadow Priest, but I am blind and I don't see it. I don't see it. That is very strange. But it would be a Shadow Priest that would go. Oh, here it is. It would be a Shadow Priest. Goes right here. Still brings PI. Does mid single target. Doesn't really do anything else. PI did get nerfed. Master Spell is 2 minutes now. There are potential Master Spell things that could be used on the last boss, but that is up to debate right now. So Shadow Priest going there, and the reason it's ahead of these specs is because range, just easier to execute. All right, next is going to be Ret Paladin. I kind of like flip flopped on Ret Paladin a lot, but right now it's numbers wise, it's like mid to lower, I want to say. But if you need the Ret Aura, or even a Devo Aura, then you can bring it in and it'll be completely and utterly fine. So last year I had Unholy. It did just get buffed, so maybe it'll be at the bottom of C. But Unholy kind of got hit hard by a lot of the changes from patch to patch, which is why you saw the buff come in. Um, so it still just might be able to destroy the boss, but gotta wait till live to see exactly how it functions. I might just put it at the bottom of C, but I'll round out C first. So at the bottom of C here, Resto Druid, and I'll even put Resto Shaman here as well. I'll just do both healers. So both these healers are fine. Like at the end of the day, they have their weaknesses, they have their pros. Um, Resto Druid got hit really, really hard in the way they changed the class, but it's still decent. It like if you look at PTR logs, it's doing a lot of HPS. I know PTR healing is kind of a joke, but um, if you have a really good Resto Druid, it's completely fine to bring it. Same thing goes to Resto Shaman. If your Resto Shaman's really good, you can bring it. Resto Shaman also has an unnerfed Spirit Link Totem. APT is really good. So Resto Shaman does bring a lot of like healing utility. That could be very useful, especially on some of these bosses. But those would go there. Next is going to be Fury Warrior. So Fury is probably the better warrior spec, and you'll take like if you have a DPS warrior, they'll probably be Fury. They're fine. They do middle damage. They bring rally. I think they scale pretty well, but they're at the bottom of C. I think it's a pretty fair place for them. So and I put them here just to do their scaling. But next here I got Ellie. Um, so Ellie's throughput is kind of crazy. Um, I think it's like top 3 in Sims, and there's some fights that really cater to it. But it doesn't bring a raid buff, and it does have weaknesses. Um, so again, if you ever really get Ellie Shaman, you can bring it no problem. It's gonna be better than it was in previous patches, but it's not like an insanely overpowered spec or anything like that. Next, we have Demo, probably the best Warlock spec. Uh, Demo was kind of struggling. All the Warlock specs really were kind of struggling on PTR, but Warlocks tend to find something magically that makes their class very good the night before the raid comes out. So I will be eating my words in 2 days, probably, but Demo's going there. And next, I'm just going to put all 3 mage specs. I don't even know what order. Probably Arcane first, then I don't know. It doesn't actually matter. I am really I just don't know. Mages always get buffed before the raid. They always like in Vault of the Incarnates, they were just like super good at like the way Razagath worked. So their profile's pretty good in the raid. They could easily move up this tier. I didn't want to put them in the next tier because I think like in terms of the other classes, the other classes just perform better throughout the PTR process. But it's just I always find a way to like get better as long as the patch goes. So at the bottom of B here, we're gonna avenge. Probably most guilds won't be taking one because Havoc is really good, and but Vengeance is also extremely good. It's probably gonna be the Met M plus tank if you care about that stuff, but um, it's just an overall really strong tank. Next, gonna put Outlaw. Um, Outlaw's weird. It did really well in PTR. It was also bugged. Um, it has a weird damage profile where it's like mostly flatline, which is not like an ideal raid thing. So I had it higher for a while, but it always ends up being that the rogues tend to go away from Outlaw, as the other specs are just more catered for the raid. Next, I have Prez. Prez seems to be performing really well. Some guilds are turning to using a Prez. Um, this will fall under the category like we'll talk about the healing stuff later, but you could take like a fourth healer would be like your Prez probably, or something like that. Like you could go that direction, but it is playing quite well. Next, we're gonna have Brewmaster Monk. So if you need Mystic Touch and you don't have a Mistweaver, Brewmaster is going to be your play right now. They are hard to play, so the tank playing them has to know what they're doing. But they did have some struggles on PTR, and some bosses, but uh, they'll be fine. If you need to take out Brewmaster for your tank, then you'll be good. Next on the list here, I have Mistweaver. It might be higher than this, but Mistweaver is kind of going to take like the rest of Druid's spot of last tier. A lot of guilds were doing Druid, but the Mistweaver just does a lot of throughput. It's pretty consistent. Revival is fine. And there's some like last boss mechanics where dispels might come into play, and revival would just like Sarkarath just make it like significantly easier. The issue with the Mistweavers is that there's not many of them. Um, so either people are really rusty at the class, or like the 7 Mistweavers that exist have been in the same guild for a long time, and those guilds have always played them because their Mistweavers are good. As a result, a lot of guilds will probably not be running one. Holy Priest is next. Symbols got nerfed. It's still decent. Like I've for many tiers, I've always underestimated Holy for the last like year, but it's probably just gonna be fine. Your priest will probably switch between Disc and Holy. Um, so and it brings PI, and I know it got nerfed, but PI is still good. So next tier, I'm gonna put Devastation. I moved this way up after getting some information like a few days ago, but it's kind of up in the air. So some people are really high on Dev, some people are really low on Dev, and I was mostly in the middle on Dev. I'm a little higher now, mostly after they changed, like they buffed their defensive ability. That was huge for them. So not only do they take less damage in raid, they're not dying as much, which makes it easier to play. So Dev, there's a chance that you take them just for their utility as well as their above, like they're like between. I think in Sims they're like between the middle and the high end, so they do pretty well. Next I have Holy Paladin. It got a lot of changes and slowly got weaker, but you'll probably be taking one of your Pally buffs from your Holy Paladin spot at least at the top 100, 200 level. And Beacon's still really good. Devo Aura is irreplaceable, so Holy Paladins are always sneaking their way in. And then next I have Prop Paladin. So Prop Paladin, might not be the tankiest tank in the world, but its utility is out of control. So in the right hands, it is extremely powerful, and it would bring you a raid buff. So a lot of guilds might look for a Prop Paladin to serve as one of those raid buffs, and then pair it with the other tank that's on hand here, the Blood DK, or the Brewmaster, depending on what else you have. So last, the top of B is going to go the Blood Death Knight. Oh, I lied. It's actually going to be the Balance Druid. So balance has kind of been rising. Its sim's extremely high, so its scaling's good. But the big thing, and I'm going to talk about this once I get the disc, is healing is really weak right now. They nerfed it a lot, and the more innervates you have, the better. It might come down to that on some fights. And I'll talk about that. I guess we'll talk about it at the AUG. But so balance has kind of been rising in priority. Like it already did good damage, but now add the innervate and stuff like that, and healers are weak. So it moved up quite a bit. So going into A, Blood Death Knight, it's was basically borderline unkillable on PTR. Granted, they usually tune stuff higher, so I don't know if it's like just gonna start getting clapped. But it's extremely good. It's probably the tankiest tank. But I'm assuming most guilds are gonna play 2 out of the 3 of a Blood DK monk and prop paladin, and guilds who don't have a Blood DK are probably going to have one of their tanks hard play, like play a lot of a Blood DK, just so you can like swap it in. So like for example, our Brewmaster is also gonna have a Blood DK. So if we need one, put in the Blood DK and bring in a Windwalker, most likely for us. But you could bring in a Mistweaver as well. Um, so that's where things are with that. Then I have BM. So BM could easily go here or here, and it wouldn't matter. But in the world first level, they might be min-maxing things like innervates or uh, think like utility-based abilities. But at the end of the day, BM can just do all these mechanics in this raid very efficiently. There's a lot of movement and a lot of abilities for ranged players to make an impact on the course of the fight. So when BM is good, it's usually really good because it's able to just take pressure off of everyone else. So maybe at the very top end, players can min-max perfectly and this class will start to fall off. But the lower you go, the more powerful like having classes like that in, especially piloted by players who understand those mechanics and can make an impact. So that's why I have it up here. But again, if you have it down here somewhere, I would also agree. And then next I have 2 rogue specs. Rogue, extremely good. I don't know which one's going to be better, but it's probably situational. They do different types of things. But assassination is arguably going to be like the PI target and an AUG target. It's that different than what it is. So it might just become like the new unholy DK. And sub also has strengths. It'll probably shred bosses like Tindril, like absolutely destroy them. So a lot of guilds are like looking at potentially doing 2 rogues, maybe 3 rogues. Um, but it's looking extremely good. Next, I have Disc. Um, Disc got buffed a lot, and other healers got weaker. And I know I've had Disc high a lot of the time. It's usually really good. It's been less good lately, but with the changes, it's probably going to be the best healer. It might be too high because maybe you don't play it on every fight and you switch to Holy for certain fights, but Disc is just the power to really take over your prog in like a good way and really do a lot of hard work for your guild. And I'll talk about the healer stuff at the Augs. So next on the list here, and they're actually both gonna be here. So you have Enhance and Havoc. Enhance brings the raid buff, does a lot of damage, makes the whole melee group stronger. It is harder to play than other classes because it's a little squishy. But in the right hands, Enhance is extremely powerful, and it has been for a while. And then last we have Havoc. Havoc is just crazy consistent. It does a lot of things well. And I mean, if you're in the M+, it's really powerful in there too. But I would be surprised if guilds take 2 Havocs if they had the option to. And it's also, I think it's a pretty good Wind Fury target too. But I'm trying to wrap this video up. Last we have AUG. Now, They just nerfed Dog again. Um, it still brings a lot of defensive abilities, especially for your tanks. Um, I think the lower you go in rank, the less good Og is. Like it's always going to be good to have one, I think, but like you got to make sure your Og's buffing the right targets and who the buff and when the buff, and it's like there is some. It is easy to like just click your buttons and do okay, but like really to get a maximum out of your Og is there's a lot of min max that goes into it, at least in raid. So with the nerfs, I think you can get away with 1 to 2. I think like if you asked me a few days ago, I'd say 2 is just straight up mandatory. Um, but now the other thing I want to talk about with AUG and also the healers is like the healers' strength, or well, really the healers getting weaker. So healing mana and like their strength in general has gone down a lot between patches. They were like healers were extremely powerful, especially in the second raid. So there might be a situation where like your augmentations are buffing your healers, um, or you need to innervate your healers, or you need to 5 heal. So these things are coming into play where it's like guilds don't really like the 5 heal because it makes damage checks, especially in harder bosses, significantly harder. So like just having your augmentation be able to buff your healers during certain points of the fight, allowing you to drop a healer and then just have an augmentation evoker who can buff your DPS during their CDs and then buff their healers elsewhere could be extremely powerful to go over the hurdles without bringing in a 5th healer or something like that. But that's the tier list as of right now. There could be changes. I talked about them. I'm just gonna send it, ship it. It's probably wrong. Just cover your raid buffs, bring your best players, and that's all you really need to do in most guilds. But that's all I got. I'm out. Peace.